right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Emily, how you doing?
Doing great. We have a big show. We have multiple guests, and we're taping a weekend show today as well that people should definitely make sure to tune in for. That'll be a good one.
That's right. Last week, Crystal and Sagar had Ken Vogel on to talk about his new book, Devil's Bargain. Devil's Advocates. Yes, Devil's Advocates. It's about representing the worst people in the world. And they told everybody to buy copies of it. Not enough of you did, so we're having him back on.
Well, the punishments
we will keep having
continue.
him on until you send this book to #1.
Yes.
Yeah, because we rely on a lot of Ken Vogel's reporting on corruption in DC and around the world. So want to get back. Also, just a great reporter.
Yeah, and he's had a really interesting career, which is what we want to talk to him about today and get into the entire sort of question of lobbying here in DC and how he covers it. So hope everyone tunes in for that. But Ryan, we'll be talking about pretty big news yesterday out of Israel. JD Vance has some comments about what the future of this peace plan actually may materialize to look like. Donald Trump could be paid $230 million by his own Department of Justice. We'll break down why. And the New York City mayoral election continues to titillate every single day. So
good time.
There's some AI we're going to run for everyone, but also just updates in that race. Graham Plattner, big updates in the Graham Plattner race. I mean, big in air quotes is probably the best way to put it.
Graham Plattner, the Democratic Senate candidate in Maine. Now that Janet Mills is in, all of Schumer's oppo is coming out. Schumer has endorsed. We'll talk about the latest that's been thrown at him. And we'll also get a response from Representative Ro Khanna, who has endorsed him and is standing by him. We're also going to talk about Karine Jean-Pierre, and who is making the rounds to promote her latest book and keeps getting confronted with the question of why should anybody listen to anything you have to say?
Yes.
And her answers have not been very persuasive.
Yeah, no. Well, and yet here we are listening to what she has to say. But we're listening to tell you that you shouldn't listen. So it's a little meta.
Yep.
And then we're going to be talking about energy.
Yeah, we'll be talking to CEO of Clean Capital, John Powers. We've been looking to get some clean energy guys on to talk about what the kind of commercial market has been like for them, both in the wake of the Build Back Better and then also the One Big Beautiful Bill, how that has changed, what it means to bring on new levels of energy production and what that's doing for energy prices.
And Ryan wandered in here this morning saying that he's going to know the future president of Ireland, like someone you talk to, like a crazy person, you just sort of pat on the head and you're like, okay, all right, bud. But he actually might. Yeah,
the Irish presidential election is on Friday. And when I was in Dublin maybe a couple months ago at this point, Abu Bakr Abed and I, as well as our friends from the ditch over there, interviewed Catherine Connolly in a Dublin pub, the basement of a Dublin pub. She had just launched her presidential campaign. She is now on track, I think, to become the next president of Ireland. So we're going to play a little bit of our interview from back in July or August, whenever that was.
Looking forward to that. So everyone stay tuned. Let's start in the Middle East, where Vice President JD Vance weighed in on where things stand right now, because the peace deal, as Crystal and Sagar have covered, is obviously in a fragile place. That's no surprise. Here's JD Vance yesterday.
The president actually put out a truth this morning that I thought was very instructive. We know that Hamas has to comply with the deal, and if Hamas doesn't comply with the deal, very bad things are going to happen. But I'm not going to do what the President of the United States has thus far refused to do, which is put an explicit deadline on it, because a lot of this stuff is difficult. A lot of this stuff is unpredictable. I don't think it's actually advisable for us to say this has to be done in a week, because a lot of this work is very hard. It's never been done before. And in order for us to give it a chance to succeed, we've got to be a little bit flexible. I think what you're seeing from our Gulf Arab friends, certainly from our Israeli friends, is a certain amount of impatience with Hamas, but we're going to keep on working at this process. In terms of the 20-point plan that the president put out there is very clear. It's supported not just by Israel, but by all of our Gulf Arab friends. It's that Hamas has to disarm. It's that Hamas has to actually behave itself, and that Hamas, while all the fighters can be given some sort of clemency, they're not going to be able to kill each other, and they're not going to be able to kill their fellow Palestinians. Now, again, that's going to take a little bit of time.
So Vance is in Israel. If you're listening to this, not watching it, you would have seen Jared Kushner flanking JD Vance. Not really a surprise, but Vance made some additional comments relevant to the Kushner question. Let's roll A2.
Well, Jared's the investor here. I'm not going to give you a percentage, but look, what we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term durable peace between Israel and Gaza, there are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today.
No reconstruction aid, no reconstruction funds will be going into areas that Hamas still controls. And as far as the demilitarization goes, once the ISF is up, there needs to be a security force that they can feel safe from, that in order for it to be the transition to be complete. So that needs to happen. There are considerations happening now in the area that the IDF controls, as long as that can be secured, to start the construction as a new Gaza in order to give the Palestinians living in Gaza a place to go, a place to get jobs, a place to live. So that's one of the many things being considered.
And so that last clip was actually of Jared Kushner himself, who is quite literally an investor in the region, no question about it. His firm, Affinity Partners, has investment from the Saudi Royal Fund.
Let's put investment in quotes.
Yeah, investment in quotes.
Investment.
The Qatari
It's an investment. It's just not necessarily looking for percentage gains year over year.
That's right. So, Ryan, with JD Vance, Jared Kushner in Israel right now, JD Vance is the one who invoked the term optimism. So if someone was looking for this peace deal to hold, does the last 24 hours leave them optimistic?
Yes. And you can gauge that by the Israeli reaction, like rage at the idea that Hamas should be given any patience. He was pressed repeatedly by Israeli reporters throughout that event to say, "What will you put a timeline? Hamas is already supposed to have returned all of the bodies. They haven't yet. Shouldn't we be allowed to open the war again?" Okay, and he says, "No, have some patience." He says, "Well, what about a timeline? A week, 2 weeks?" And he kept coming back to them and saying, "Look, a lot of these bodies are under thousands of tons of rubble. So this is a logistical challenge." And it was an interesting kind of contrast between what Vance was describing, which is kind of the real world, which is very rarely described in this situation, versus the just made up ideas.
The diplomacy.
About how we just need to go root out evil.
Yeah.
And it was kind of jarring to see the contrast between the two things being presented there. And Kushner and Vance were there. They asked JD Vance, "Are you here because of you think that the Israeli overreaction on Sunday to that incident in Rafah, which is disputed about what happened? Are you here because you think Israel overreacted and you're trying to clamp them down?" And he said, No, I was planning on coming anyway. But the answer wasn't convincing. It seemed very clear, and it seemed clear to the Israeli media, that Witkoff, Kushner, and Vance came basically to babysit. And while they were there, they talked a lot about this deconfliction center, where they have 200 American service members in the Negev Desert who are basically going to be in an operational center with the IDF. And that is being received in some quarters of Israel as a humiliation, that this is the United States kind of taking over control because they don't trust Israel to abide by the terms of the ceasefire. Now, what I was told over the weekend when I was reporting on that incident that happened in Rafah is that and so if people didn't follow that, there was, the IDF claimed that there had been snipers and terrorists jumped out of a tunnel with RPGs, and there was this massive complex attack, and then somehow they snuck back into Gaza. Well, they were in Rafah, and they snuck back into behind the Israeli lines. What I was told is that it was this 200-member American unit that discovered very quickly, no, that's not what happened, and that's how the information then got relayed, higher up the chain of the Pentagon, and so that shows the way that this deconfliction process is supposed to work.
And clearly, people in the administration believed, or did not believe, I should say, the Israeli story because they were leaking as much to Kurt Mills and others. Right.
And Netanyahu on Sunday afternoon announced a complete full spectrum ban on life essentials going into Gaza in response to what he said was this attack. Hours later, he said, actually, we're going to resume allowing in life essentials Monday morning, which was just hours away. So you could tell that something had changed, and so to your question, I think that's the reason there was some optimism that this deconfliction center is becoming a real node of power in the region. And so if the IDF wants to restart the war, restart its attack in a full-scale way, they're going to continue doing what they call mowing the lawn, which is killing 1 to a dozen Palestinians every single day. And they have this imaginary yellow line that now they're allegedly they're going to start putting down little markers every 200 meters to say, if you go beyond this yellow line, we'll kill you. They have been killing people beyond this line that doesn't exist except in maps, and no Palestinian really knows where it is. And if they go over it, they shoot and kill them. So they'll continue to do that. But in order to ramp it back up to the levels we were seeing before, they'll have to go through this deconfliction center, which is run by the Americans. And for now, the Americans don't want this to break wide open again. So
on that note, did you see this exchange between Zach Witkoff?
I sure did.
This was, this
and Eitan Fishberger or whatever.
Yeah. And this goes to, I think, what you were describing behind the Vance Kushner motivation in going to, maybe the way to describe it is babysit this process, because Zach Witkoff, who is the son of Steve Witkoff, got into a very interesting exchange on X that they all did it in the quote tweet way, so it's really hard to actually read through.
Right.
But basically, Fishberger was attacking Witkoff and Kushner because, quote, their close ties with the Qatari government actually significantly prolonged the conflict because it kept them under the illusion that Qatar was an honest broker throughout this war. Zach Witkoff, very defensive of this process, and it just shows you how deeply tied to their legacy people in this administration, people outside of this administration, like Jared Kushner, who does not have a formal role, want this peace process to be. He says Witkoff and Kushner didn't, quote, prolong anything. They worked around the clock to bring Israelis home safely. It's easy to criticize from afar. It also shows how little you understand about complex foreign policy issues. A simple thank you might be more appropriate. And they went back and forth for a really long time. And Witkoff was essentially, Zach Witkoff, that is, was essentially defending their relationships with the Qataris in the sense that, Ryan, you were saying there's something jarring about hearing the realism of these guys who are business people come in and not use these like diplomatic platitudes, but just kind of discuss it in a way that you don't hear in Washington.
Well, also, Leslie Stahl asked in her interview on 60 Minutes, asked Witkoff and Kushner about their conflicts of interest. And one of them said, what you call conflicts of interest, we call experience.
Yeah, it's so good.
I thought he was going to say, what you call conflicts of interest, we call $2 billion in our pocket.
Yep.
So what is
if
the
we get $2 billion
here?
And everyone's at peace, what's the big deal? Yeah.
Zach Witkoff, for his part, is he ran around Pakistan, shaking them down for crypto.
Yep.
Ran around the Gulf, shaking them down for deals for the Witkoff's company, which Steve Witkoff is still a part owner of. So like Zach Witkoff is out doing all these deals, benefiting the company that his dad owns.
Yep.
Now I say all that, and I'm team Zach Witkoff in this argument that he's having with Fishberger, because Fishberger's point is ridiculous because he's saying this would have ended much sooner if it weren't for this Qatari corruption. Like Fishberger and his whole crew hate that it ended at all. What do you mean ended sooner? You didn't want it to end, period. This deal has been on offer for a very long time, and you haven't wanted to take it. The underlying argument that Fishberger was making is the Doha attack brought about the...
Right.
And Zach is like, that's idiotic. You tried to kill the negotiators.
Right.
We were moving toward a deal with these negotiators. You failed to kill them. You killed Khalil al-Hayya's son, killed 4 office workers, you killed a security guard, you injured his wife, you injured their grandkids. But that didn't bring us to a deal here. What brought them to a deal is Trump saying it's time to make a deal. Actually, that's it. Like he said, look, it's over. You're taking it. Stop being such a whining baby. What was his phrase? Why are you always so negative?
Yeah.
Take the
Or play
effing
the
deal.
victim. I think we've heard
That's
that
Witkoff
one.
saying they play the victim.
Right.
Witkoff, and then, yesterday in the press conference said something very fascinating, because there's been this reporting that Witkoff keeps telling Israelis, stop acting like victims privately. You're not the victim here. He told Ben-Gvir, stop acting like this victim all the time. Publicly, yesterday morning, he said, I was just in a meeting with 10 hostage families and released hostages. Everybody was crying. He talked about how it was such a privilege for him to be in there. And he said, you know what? There was not a single victim in that room. So he's now saying it publicly to their face. Stop with this victim crap. We're sick of it.
Well, and the reason that exchange between Zach Witkoff was, or I think is important right now, is that it shows you why JD Vance and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Israel right now, in that they believe it's possible a tripwire is sort of intentionally tripped and everything falls apart. And so I think actually, Ryan, your description of babysitting is accurate. That's what's happening right now. It's exactly what's
Jeremy
happening
yesterday just described it as like basically putting a leash on the attack dog, which I think is also maybe a better one. And that doesn't mean that they won't let that attack dog loose again at some time in the near future, but just not yet. Like Netanyahu's idea that Trump could do this gigantic victory lap at Sharm el-Sheikh and nominate himself repeatedly for the Nobel Prize, and then he's going to blow the deal up within a week?
Yeah.
The guy. A little quick there.
Yes. I know you wanted to mention the Israeli right's reaction to all of this, Ryan.
Yeah, they've been talking about it as a humiliation. And actually some of the Israeli left, there is no Israeli left, but the Yair Lapid types have been saying Netanyahu has brought us to a full vassal state, that we are now like thoroughly and obviously under the thumb of the United States, where Trump is just explicitly and publicly dictating to us what we can do. Whereas, obviously the U.S. being the most powerful country in the world can like tell other countries what to do, but to do it so brazenly, they say, is like a real slap across the face of Israeli dignity. And it is like would the U.S. like allow so there's American troops and a giant American presence that is kind of controlling is what the Israelis can do in response to what they perceive as breakdowns of the agreement. And the big conflict that's coming is Trump keeps insisting that Indonesians or Jordanians or some other Arab or Muslim troops come in as part of this stabilization force. And as Kushner was talking about in that clip you watched, Netanyahu absolutely does not want that to happen. But Netanyahu's kind of boxed in. Because when he I just imagine him going to Trump. Like, let's say Indonesia's like, all right, we got 20,000 guys we're ready to send. And Netanyahu's like, I don't want them. Trump's going to blow his top. What do you mean you don't want them? Are you always so negative? I'm solving this for you.
Yeah.
But they don't want more Muslim people, especially with guns, in Gaza. They want fewer. So that's going to be an interesting conflict when it comes.
Early days. Now, as the administration tries to augment this very fragile peace process, the Russia peace process, the Ukraine peace process is falling apart. An official told CNN yesterday, an administration official said there are, quote, no plans for a summit between Trump and Putin, quote, in the immediate future. As CNN notes, the change in posture comes after Trump said the leaders would meet, quote, within 2 weeks or so, pretty quick, after they spoke by phone last Thursday. It's looking less likely that'll actually happen. This is another quote from an administration official. Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, had a productive call. Therefore, an additional in-person meeting between the Secretary and Foreign Minister is not necessary, and there are no plans for President Trump to meet with President Putin in the immediate future, according to that administration official in CNN. So Rubio and Lavrov spoke over the phone on Monday, and it seems as though any hopes for this Budapest botched summit fell apart afterwards.
Yeah, what Trump needs is small powers that he can just tell what to do. Like with, Hamas and PIJ on one side and then Israel on the other, he can, with enough force, kind of dictate, at least in the short term, what the terms are. Witkoff is now he's going to apparently mediate between Morocco and Algeria. That's something that they can bite off. Maybe, we'll see. That's been a long simmering conflict. We'll see. But Russia, like Trump can't just tell Putin what to do. And Trump thought he and Putin were on the same page. Turns out they're not. So he's just flailing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it play out in public where on the one hand, Trump is like going full John Bolton neoconservative towards Putin, and then the next day going full like Jeffrey Sachs, like realist. And the narrative gets spun that he's fully in one direction or the other, but this is actually Trump's bizarrely transparent negotiating process playing out, where it's almost like insulting to your intelligence when he goes and is like, we're just going to conquer Putin and take him out and all of that. Like, we know what you're doing.
Yeah.
We know exactly what you're doing.
He just can't believe that Putin won't take yes for an answer.
Yeah. It's not going so well for Donald Trump, who was supposed to solve this in 24 hours, according to his own. And he's addressed that and said it hasn't quite been that easy. To your point, Ryan, that he thought he had a little bit more sway than he actually does. So we'll see, obviously, in the future how this continues to evolve. But right now, looking pretty bad for peace in Ukraine.
Yeah. So maybe he can reach peace with Venezuela. Like, that's another thing he could do.
Even less likely.
Just like not, but all he has to do there is not attack them.
Even less likely.
We'll see.
Already got the ships down there. What do? Right? CIA's down there.
Yeah.
Doing their work.
I have faith he could just not bomb them.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.